Hello, welcome to week 16, our last week together. Can you believe it's been 16 weeks? You probably can because you've been doing all the work, but you should be so proud of yourself for sticking it out this long. Thank you so much for staying with me and with the course for this long. So, definitely kudos to you. So, just a couple PSAs before we get started on chapter 16. I just wanted to remind you your final is due this week. So, technically it's due by Wednesday. I need to have grades submitted by the weekend, so please, as soon as you can in this week, get your final. Once you've read over chapter 16, you have a hold on that knowledge. Please do your final immediately. Don't put it off. It has to be done because I have to have grades turned in by the weekend. So if it is not finished by midweek, you're going to get a 0 for it because I have to turn your grade in by the weekend. So please make sure you get it done so you get the full credit for it. So I cannot stress enough. Please, as soon as you have an opportunity this week, as soon as you have read through chapter 16, submit your final exam so you can get credit for the work that you've done. Or I'm going to have to submit it as a 0, which I totally do not want to do. But it's the end of the semester and grades are due, and I cannot push it off. Like we've been able to kind of manipulate our dates during the semester. We can't do that this week. So please, imperative that you get your final exam turned in on time so we can get you your full grade that you deserve. Okay, so our last discussion together, chapter 16, is about financial management. Not a really exciting topic to end our semester on, but definitely imperative for the health of your business or the business that you work for. So they talk about, well, let's start out with the importance, right? Why is it important? So chapter 16 starts with a discussion on why financial management is important, and they talk about the two-sided coin, really, of financial management, right? The amount of money that your firm has, the amount of capital that your firm has, dictates what you can do, um, really. And then on the opposite side of that, what you want to do is, or what you can do is dictated by how much money you have. So, you may have these grandiose ideas, but does your bank account support it? I mean, you can't go to the moon if you only have going to McDonald's money, right? So the amount of money that you have for your business dictates what you can do, but the things that you really want to do, the things that you can do, are dictated by how much money you have. So that's the two-sided coin there. Financial managers must ensure that funds are available when needed. So there's a whole system, and we'll talk about it a little bit. But you have to make sure that if you are the financial lead for a company, or if it's your own company and you're working on the finances for it, you have to make sure that when you need money, it's there. So how do you get that money? First is to, as it's spoken about in 16.2, first is to identify your short-term and long-term needs. So short-term is money for less than a year. And this is kind of even how it works for your own personal finances, right? You have to determine what you need to live day to day. That's your short-term. How do you pay your bills right now? How do you have food on the table every day? And that's the same as for a business. How do you have the money to, say you own a restaurant, right? How do you have the money to buy the supplies you need? How do you have the money to pay your servers? How do you, have your short-term daily operating budget for less than 1 year is considered short-term. And then the long-term then is, how do you succeed long-term over a year, for over the period longer than a period of 1 year? How do you ensure your financial success long-term? Similar, right? Like, how do you plan for your retirement? How do you save for your kids' college? Those are different than, or maybe your own college down the road, who knows? But how, those are different requirements than how do you put food on the table today, short term? How do you plan for your retirement long term? It's the same conversation in a business, right? How do you buy your supplies today, short term? How do you ensure that you'll be able to grow, right? How do you open a new location? How do you increase your fleet? How do you increase your staff long term, over a year from now? Those are the same considerations, that you need to take into account for a business. So they talk about the planning process, right? How do you get started planning these short term and long term? Really, you start with your goal. What is your goal? right? If your goal is to maintain the location that you have, right? Again, with you own a restaurant, okay? So you want to maintain the location that you have. Great. That's a great goal. Or maybe your goal is I want to franchise. I want to start this as a chain. I want it to be, worldwide, a much bigger goal. So you have to understand the goal that you want for your business. If you're happy just to have your one location and you run it every day and you make a good living off of it and you're able to pay your employees, great. That's your goal then. So, you keep going with that. Or if you want a larger goal, if you want, like I said, if you want to open multiple locations or something, you have to consider all the financials in there. You can't just do it immediately. You can't just say, day 2, I'm going to open, day 1, I opened my first location, day 2, I'm going to open 3 more. It doesn't really work that way. So you have to prioritize those goals and put the money with it, and put the realistic costs with it as part of your financial management plan. The 4 principal sourcings of finance to get that money, right, as part of your goal, are sales revenues, equity capital, debt capital, and proceeds from sale of assets. So, all of those can be, you can get investors, capital, you can sell things. You just make your money from, the actual processing of your products. Or you can sell things, right? Maybe you have extra equipment that you don't need anymore, or you're upgrading you're upgrading from the 5,000 to the 10,000, or whatever it is. So machine, I'm thinking, right? So you have like the X5000. You can sell your X5000 to somebody else who might need it, and you can upgrade to your X10000. But you can make a little money by selling your old one. 16.4 talks about financial services, what banks and other financial institutions can do for your business. So they talk about savings accounts, certificates of deposit, checking accounts, short and long-term loans, credit card, debit card. Again, very similar to your personal life, right? Just at an institutional level instead of a personal level. 16.5 goes on to talk about short-term debt financing, the advantages and disadvantages of unsecured or secured loans. The disadvantage normally is, how you pay it back, how, the length. Could also be, how much credit you would have to get things. Again, just like your personal life, right? But then how you have to pay it back. What kind of interest there is, what kind of rates there are, what kind of terms there are for you to pay it back. Goes on to talk about equity financing. So equity financing is stocks, right? So if you're a private company, you don't have that. There's no equity financing for a private company because you don't have stocks. But once you go public, once you have your IPO, your initial public offering, IPO. Once you have that IPO, hopefully there's a lot of buzz, right? And everybody's excited to buy your IPO, and you have a great first day, and sell, tons of stock, hopefully all that you wanted to and more. Then there's other ways. There's other stock equity financing. There's different kinds of stocks, and they go into the definition of all the different kinds of stocks. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but you can read them. But those equity offerings are a way to make money for your organization. I don't know if they talk about it here, but you can also, after a while, buy some of that stock back. So you have a little more ownership in your company, because every stock that you sell is one less part of your company that you own. And it is now publicly owned instead of just owned by you, privately owned. It's a publicly owned business now. So advantages and disadvantages of using equity finance stocks to make your money. The last thing they talk about is, this is how they end the book. It's kind of a dry way to end the book, but this is how they end the book. Evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of long-term debt financing. So they're talking about borrowing money, right? Debt financing is generally limited to loans for smaller companies, and then larger corporations can also issue corporate bonds. And it's similar to stocks, but a little bit different, and you can read about it. Financial leverage is the use of borrowed funds to increase the return on owners' equity. So your financial leverage, you're gonna get more if you're using other people's money also, right? If you're just putting in your own, $100, you're gonna get less than if you use your $100 plus the $100 of 100 investors. Now you have a lot more money. Now you have a lot more financial leverage to increase the return on your owner's equity. Eventually, you'll have to pay that back, of course, but in the meantime, you can use that money to raise additional capital. Long-term business loans are normally, so this is loans now, actual like bank loans. Long-term business loans are normally repaid in 3 to 7 years, but can be 15 to 20. And you can reannualize those. A good financial manager is not going to pay the interest on it. They're not going to probably, they're going to take their lowest term interest and refinance it into other things. And so it's a very complex calculation of how to get the most out of even loans. Because you just say, oh, I'm going to take the loan, use the money from the loan and make that into capital, great. But you can also maybe not make money, but spend less money, maybe even make money, I guess, if you have a decent financial manager. You can spend less money to pay that money back if you have a good plan in place. Maturity dates for bonds generally range from 1 to 30 years after the date of issue. 3 types of bonds are debentures, mortgage bonds, and convertible bonds, and they're sold to raise debt capital. And that's a whole separate process. The school board not the school board, the school district that my kids go to, we just passed a bond initiative. It was publicly voted. It had to be voted on. So we sold bonds to make money to do some construction around our school district for things that needed to be updated. It comes out of taxpayer money, right? So we have that pool of money from taxpayers to sell into bonds, and then we have to pay it back. And so we have, I think it's 25 years, we have to pay it back. But again, the school's financial manager uses that time to move things around and reinvest things and reannualize different things to spend less money to pay it back. And they've done this before, and they actually came in a few $1 million under budget paying it back last time. So that's the assumption of what will happen this time as well. So we'll pay it off sooner than what is required, and maybe save a little money on it. So those long-term bonds can be beneficial if you know how to manage them correctly. So when comparing the cost of long-term financing, ongoing costs of using stock or equity to finance the business are low. The most expensive is a long-term loan. So just like in your personal life, right, taking out a loan is always going to cost you more money than saving the money yourself, or different ways. Taking out a bank loan with interest is going to cost you the most. Actually, taking it out from a personal, maybe less than reputable place, like those payday loans, don't start with those. You'll never get out of them because they charge you so much interest that you're paying back 3 times, 4 times what you borrowed. So, that can be huge. And once you get into that cycle of debt, whether it's personal or business, you'll never get out. There's no way to pay them off. So it continues forever. So that's not great financial management. It seems like maybe you're having an advantage in the short term, but in the long term, all that interest is just it's gonna kill you. So that's the benefit of good financial management, right? That you're able to identify the advantages and disadvantages of using all the different types of loans or bonds or stocks or whatever it is available to you and your business. So not in a really exciting last discussion, but a very important one for your business and the success of your business. So again, thank you so much for sticking with me for the full 16 weeks. It's been a great class for me. I hope it has for you. Get those finals turned in as soon as possible, and I'm excited to get your grades posted and get you all on to your next business course. So hopefully I will see you again at some point. But again, thank you for everything that you've done this semester.